All right, so welcome to another episode of the Coaching Shop. My name is Kyla Rae. I will be your host for this evening, and this is a space where coaches come to talk shop while building worlds that work. And tonight we have a very exciting episode. We are exploring the distinction and the competency around questioning, and specifically questioning versus leading, right? So, the art of coaching without fixing is what tonight's episode is called. And in a world that's really obsessed with answers, especially the right answer, and quick results, it's easy for even seasoned coaches to fall into the trap of leading when really our job is to be listening. So, in tonight's conversation, we have Laura Leaton Roberts, PCC executive coach, leadership development expert, and of course, alumni of Ideal Coaching Global. And we're going to explore the quiet power of being with the question, which is really where discovery begins. And so I like to think of this as the alchemy of inquiry. So, how do we begin to question without rushing to an answer and really evoking the creativity of our client, heightening their awareness, and creating sustainable growth? So, welcome, Laura. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this.
Ah, me too. Definitely. So we have Laura here, and we also have a live audience tonight. I see we have quite a few people on already. There is an interactive chat for all of you. So go ahead, tell us who you are, where you're from. We have alumni and a community beyond our alumni all over the world. So say hello. Use this chat throughout the call to jump in, ask us questions, make your own observations. We really want to hear from you as well. So let's go ahead and dive in, Laura. We were talking, originally about this idea of how it's so easy to want to give answers and lead people to what we think, oh, this is what they should do, right? But let me ask a question that make it a question instead of telling them, right? So, talk a little bit about why you wanted to speak on this topic tonight.
Well, I think it's twofold. One, because it's a work in progress for me. I think it's like in my DNA to always have to step back and say, wait a second, why do I feel I need to solve this? You know? And then the second is I feel like it's weekly that I have clients reach out to me and they say, hey, do you have a workshop or a training on account management or how to do this or how to do that? And I think to myself, you know, once I do a discovery call and I'm sitting with them a little bit to understand their needs a little bit more, the reality of it is that they have a lot of individuals within the culture of their company that are being told what to do by people who are fixing, and so
Hmm.
they get to a point when it comes to strategy over execution and they get stuck. And what I mean by that is the innovation and the creation and the ability to say, oh, solve the problem for themselves versus always being dependent on their leader. They get to a standstill. And so it's something that's been very interesting to me because I've found in my own world as I've started to I say get over myself, meaning get over my need to perform and let their need to think trump the situation, right?
Mm.
And as I think about that more, I'm like, wow, you start seeing individuals bloom and start innovate and not and there's like self-reliance. There's a lot more self-reliance. So they're creating a culture of individuals and teams who are able to think on their feet, think for themselves, create and innovate and get past possibilities that any of us would have thought because we're trying to fix it and move fast. So, the whole time constraint is an element too that causes me personally to get into the fix it mode. I don't have time. And when in reality, it may solve the problem in the short term, but in the long term, you've got a lot of people that are dependent on you to get things
Right.
done. So that's really why when you said, hey, like, what's something that's near and dear to your heart that really shows up in your coaching and training, because I do a lot of training, is that I think the idea and the definition of leadership is how much can I win, when in the reality of it is a testament of a true successful leader is somebody who creates self-reliance and creates other leaders. Yeah. But when you're in a sales world, I was in corporate America where it was sales, performance, ranking. It's hard in that world to stay in a coaching mindset so that people can really accelerate in terms of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a sales background as well, and it's a lot of telling versus listening, right? We're always explaining something, and I think we miss a lot of the magic in both worlds, actually, when that's our aim for people to understand rather than to understand ourselves, where they're at, where they're coming from. Um, and and the alchemy of inquiry, right? This magical kind of place where questions come from, powerful questions. It's really not something that you can turn into a list, right? It's in sales and the corporate world, we like lists, we like scripts, we
Right.
like we like things really neat and tidy, and that doesn't work in a powerful
Right.
coaching session. Questions are not powerful by themselves.
Mhm.
They're powerful because they come from a context, a deep listening, when we really see and hear, we're able to you kind of pull this question out of the ether, that could have never come from a list, and present it. But I remember being a student, and I have students even now who will ask, "Do you have a list of powerful questions?"
Right.
Right? Can
Right. I was going to say
I
that.
get a
Yeah.
list? So let's talk about this kind of like magical place where questions live, and how do we connect with that realm and provide powerful questions?
Yeah. I keep thinking, I don't think I really started coaching. Let me go that far. Um, until I started trusting my own wisdom. And when I say that, it's because those evocative questions, those expansive questions, come from a deeper awareness of our own trust in ourselves as a coach, right? So I think, I always say to myself, um, I'm coaching when I'm trusting what's coming up and going there. Now you think to yourself, that's great when I'm doing performance coaching or when I'm working with individuals like corporate America. No, you don't do that stuff there. But in reality, that's where the magic happens with a lot of the executive coaching is when I trust myself. Well, maybe something will come up and I'll say, I'm a little intimidated by this executive. I'm not going there with what's coming up for me because they're going to think it's woo woo and go like get out of my office, right? But I have found more often than not that if I trust that and I go there, it breaks open the relationship like tenfold in the ability for them to start asking themselves the deeper questions, coming to the solutions that may not feel right, but moving through them. So it's that when you mention how do you get to the place where you start asking these expansive questions, I got there when I started trusting my own wisdom.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, and every coach is different, of course, but for me, the ego, I'll call it, the part of us that wants to perform,
Hmm.
the part of us that wants to show up really like badass, right, on the call or in the session, speaks loudest and first.
Hmm.
And it's bringing in these things, and it's right, it's grasping for something. And when I'm able to quiet that, and put it in the background, right? And really become present, that's when I start to, I think, really trust rather than wanting to reach and get there as quickly as possible. Um, Letting myself be in the question with them is really powerful. And I like that you bring trust into it because it does. It takes you really trusting that the answer will come to me.
Mhm.
I don't need to have it already, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
I think a lot about preparation and going into a call as well. When it comes to, you mentioned ego, so I always think to myself, um, are the questions that I'm teeing up, are they from my ego, how I'm feeling in the moment? Are they from my image, meaning how I want to look in that moment? Or are they questions that are coming from an informational source? Like really, and then you have to ask yourself too, is like, why am I asking these questions per se? So it's really a grounding in preparation prior to the actual time spent with with the client as well. Where am I coming from in terms of my questioning? And that's something that I think a lot about in terms of when when I'm grounded and I'm feeling confident and trusting, my questions are more expansive and do come a play very evocative. I keep using the word evocative. There's a lot of emotion to them, But when they're not, I can feel that the questions feel um, rehearsed or check the box, or when you get stuck in that place where you're like, oh, and you feel like you need to perform, right? And then in that moment, being able to shift to just being with it.
Hmm. Yeah. And also because not every question is going to be super powerful,
Right.
but they all for me are stepping stones. Right? So I might need to clarify something first, and then I might need to maybe even go in the wrong direction a little bit first. But okay, now I know. Nope, that's not where we're going, right? So every question, and if I just keep trusting that, um, rather than again going to, oh God, I'm going the wrong way. That wasn't a great question. Blah, 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 right? If I trust that, if I, okay, no, that, okay, ooh, that's a clue. It's not that way. Okay, let me try this way. And staying present and listening to the client rather than listening to all that chatter will eventually, and then it will just drop in for me. This is a question that needs to be asked. And there's a feeling for me. I'm very kinesthetic, but there's a feeling for me like, yep, got it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's such a great feeling when that question comes out because it really, it's I think what has people think about it in a way they've never thought about it before that changes the whole session.
Yeah. And that head chatter, that's what came up for me, that head chatter that goes on. And the reason why I brought this topic up, because a lot of the coaching and training that I do, which are very distinctly different, and we can speak about that as well, but they've interchangeably helped me um, create more impact with the group for sure in my training. Coaching has helped that. Um, is that rush that comes up that it's like, okay, we're holding this space of inquiry and innovation and just being whoever they want to be in that moment when they're in this world of control and command and titles and ROI, and you have the space for them, and then all of a sudden you think they're trying to move forward, they're trying to increase improve the culture on their team or the performance, or and that kind of is a derailer. So that's something that I struggle with quite a bit, is knowing that this space that may feel a little uncomfortable and foreign to them is actually very very much needed in terms of the end result. But the timing of it and the pressing and the performance of it, that's where a lot of this is tough to stay in that coaching presence.
Hmm.
It's in, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not just us as coaches who want to fix the problem. The
Hmm.
client does too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're sick of having the problem. They don't like, who likes problems, right? We like solutions. So it's not just us as coaches that is overcoming, this need to fix, but it's also the client. So how do you evoke that presence with them to trust and be in the question rather than, I've had clients who are like, where is this going? Can we, what am I supposed to do? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I wish I had the answer for that. It's so uniquely different for each client. It's interesting. A lot of the companies that I go into, I've forged relationships with already. So that trust is already there in a lot of ways. Either they know of me or they've heard of me. And so that helps a lot. Um, but when I go in with a client who may be very skeptical of coaching anyway, which is very often in executive coaching, that happens, right? You really almost have to go in with a vulnerability that allows them to see you first. The real you first. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I've noticed that really establishing that vulnerable relationship where I just get to be me, messy. I mean, they know the accolades. I've been in their world. I've had the titles and blah 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 blah. But then they get to see the messiness behind that, and I've noticed that just that presence alone brings the guard down a little bit, you know. But then again, I think the bigger thing is going in, like you mentioned, with the intention that it's gonna go wherever it's supposed to go, and I'm not gonna guide it like maybe a mentor would, right? I'm not going to instruct it. I'm not going to consult it like maybe an instructor or trainer or consultant would. That I'm going to go in with the intention that they've got it within them. They have the answers, right? And if I can ground myself in that prior to going in, then I'm able to let go of that a little bit more. And I think they can feel that, honestly, you know? Because they're wanting to control it and move it and fix it the minute we get on, and most of mine are on Zoom, so they're willing to they want to control it right then. You can feel it. So I almost go in prepared with that to kind of just be with it, but I really have to ground myself because I wear a lot of hats, and we do sometimes, sometimes we do go into mentoring mode. It's a distinction, and be very discerning with that, but sometimes we do go into mentoring mode because I've had the expertise that a lot of the people that I coach. Sometimes I go into a training mode. That's distinctly different as well. But in coaching, I've got to recognize that I'm here with a very brilliant person who has the answers.
Hmm. So let's actually take a second to break down these distinctions a little bit. So you see when you have different hats. How is coaching distinct from mentoring in the executive world?
Yeah, so coaching is more about asking those expansive questions to evoke awareness, right? So the major focus there is the intention that you're going in, that they have the answers. They've got it within them. We're just evoking awareness through expansive questioning to really get them to where they want to go. And they're still very goal oriented. They're still setting their goals, They're still walking through, taking them forward thinking into what their vision, what would it look like if it was just exactly the way you wanted it to be, and then we're diving into all of their ideas. So that's really the coaching part. We get into the mentoring side of things. Mentoring is a little bit different in terms that the mentor typically has the ex is has a similar expertise as the person that's training. So like the industry that I worked in, I will typically mentor some people in that industry because I've been in that industry in sales with them. So it's typically there's coaching, a little bit of coaching involved, but mostly the anchoring or the intention is I'm here with you. I'm going to guide you through this, right? Where coaching, see the distinction there between the two. We're not guiding them in coaching. It's open. It's open. Now, some of our questioning, we have to be careful with the topic today of leading. So some of our questions can be leading if we're not careful. But if we really think about opening up to the idea and firmly believing that they have the answers, then that's the true difference between the two.
Right. Because with mentoring, it's almost like the mentor is supposed to have the answer. That's why you have a mentor, right? And it's not that they might just give it to you,
Mhm.
but they might lead you to it, like you said, guide you to it. But what's the point of having a mentor if they don't know, have, greater competency in that field than you do?
Yeah.
Whereas coaching, you don't need to have the competencies of what they're working or the field they're working in. Um, so let's talk about leading questions then as coaches, right? Because it's so easy to drop in a leading question. I mean, as a beginner coach, I did it all the time, but sometimes I'll still catch myself going, that question was a little off, right? Like,
Yeah, there's my agenda coming up.
well, yeah, there it is. Could have just made that a statement.
Yeah, yeah.
So, mhm.
I think it's tough to do, honestly. I catch myself with it all the time. I'm constantly like, okay, I want to ask this question, but wait a second, that's my agenda. Like I'm leading them to this end. Like I've got this end in mind. Like so having to be very conscious of that. Um, yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest things, especially if I've worked in their world and know their world and understand what's going on. Leading is a little hard to get out of. But when I'm working with a client where I'm not even, have never even touched their industry or their expertise, I find that be a little bit easier.
Mm,
Now typically they come to you with a problem within their expertise, and by the time you get halfway through the engagement, it has nothing to even do with that anyway. So it's typically, I've found that's the case. um but yeah, the leading questions in terms of, yeah, I don't know the answer to. It's
well,
tough.
you said something powerful, and I think that it's something we talk about specifically in ontological coaching is this ability that we have to start developing as coaches to observe ourselves during a session. So not only are we observing the client and their listening and their way of being and where they're coming from and their context and blah 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 blah, but we also have to be able to observe ourselves and notice when we have an agenda, notice when and that's tricky to do. Most people are not trained to do that. They don't even know that that is a possibility, right? To sit there and observe our own blind spots because we're blind to them, right? But we can start to actually uncover those in the middle of a coaching session. We just had Michelle here say self-awareness is the first step in emotional intelligence. Thank you, Michelle. Yes. It's this muscle as coaches that is, I think, crucial and central to our work because it's not enough to simply observe the client. We also have to be aware that we are inserted in the session and observing our own come from.
Yeah, it's interesting. The past couple weeks, I've been engaged in a training on coachability, which I
Mm,
think is fantastic, um, because it's the other side of the coin, right? We're always, for me personally, either observing a coaching training or delivering training on coaching essentials. But this is a training on the other side of the equation that says, um, how open are you to letting information in? Now, they may use the word feedback, ideas, thoughts, possibilities. What does that look like for you in terms of your humility or authenticity? And it's been fascinating, um, the learnings that I've had in that because, God, it's such a dance. It's such a relationship, coaching that, and and I think when I tend to get stuck, it's because it's coming from me out versus me letting something in, right? Recognizing what am I allowing to come in? What do I have resistance on that they may have said, or their behaviors or their body language? How did that affect me? Or how did that affect the question that I asked? Right? So it's so complex at times to think about. In order for me to provide or hold space for expansiveness, I have to have an openness. There has to be a coachability to me as well. And I don't know if there's enough on that focus, on that side. It's always about, let me teach you how to be a good coach. Well, what about there's a receiving side to that, what I hear you saying, that awareness
Hmm.
makes a
Exactly.
big difference.
Yeah. I mean, on the quantum level, we would say what we observe becomes our reality. So the more we're able to observe our own listening, our own context, our own coachability, whatever it is, the more connected we become to creating structures in which we can exist. And I think that's really important for coaching, how we're creating the space right now in which life occurs. This expansive, explosive space is something we're always creating. And how aware are we that we're creating it?
I see JC put mirror. We get to mirror coachability. I say that all the time. Like, I forget it. I forget it a lot, JC, but I say it a lot is that we mirror each other always, everywhere, all the time, every second at the grocery store, whatever, with our loved ones, with my clients. And it's an interesting concept because I can feel that too. If I show up to a engagement or a coaching um, call where I'm not in the place, I can feel that it's mirrored. Like we are mirrors of each other.
Mm,
Something to think about in terms of you know my responsibility and how I show up for that.
right,
You know.
exactly. This idea that there's no life outside of me, the observer. And again, I'm kind of like went this quantum direction, but this idea of mirroring, right? I'm always projecting out into the world. So, of course, everything's being mirrored back to me. It's me that's doing the projection. So, we don't actually see the world as it is, ever. We see the world as we've made it.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't make sense to even say that we're going through the world without mirroring each other. Um, it- and we're not even mirroring each other, we're always just mirroring ourselves. And every relationship that we come into, we are putting our interpretations onto that person, onto the situation, onto all of it. So I think it's important as coaches that we're aware that we are bringing all of this stuff to the table,
Yeah.
right? We're never actually seeing our client truly as they are. It's impossible. We aim to do that, but we have to be aware that we're always bringing us to the session.
Hmm.
And I think that becomes really important because our interpretations are what brings forth the questions that we ask.
Which is an interesting in and of itself because could that be considered agenda, right? So it's an interesting concept to think about when all we're doing is interpreting anyway. Um,
Mhm.
so if that's the case, and we're curious and we bring in a question to the table, like in and of itself, it could be considered an agenda anyway. But I get what you're saying. I was just that's what I heard when you were talking. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow,
I mean,
okay.
it's an interesting question. Like,
Yeah,
can we ever really step into a completely neutral place where we don't have any agenda at all? I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know if
yeah.
that's possible in the human condition
Mm,
to fully step outside of ourselves into a completely neutral zone. What I would say is instead we get to be aware of the agenda that we're running,
hmm. Yeah.
and become the kind of observer that is curious, the kind of observer who wants to explore rather than the kind of observer that goes, "Oh, I see everything clearly, and I'm going to fix this right now for you," right? Because when we know that we're always interpreting, we also know that we're never seeing it completely clearly. We're seeing it from our worldview. And
Hmm.
therefore, we can't actually have the right answer for them. They have to discover the answer because that's just how it works, right? So, what kind of observer are we? What agenda are we playing, right? And I think you said the perfect word, and that's curiosity. It is the agenda I want to be running, being more and more curious and beginning to listen in a certain way where life becomes more profound, more joyous, more, right? Add whatever word that you want. But I think that's something we can bring to the table when we lead with curiosity.
Hmm. You see, Ariel said, when I'm experiencing a client hanging tight onto their lens, their filter, their perspective, sometimes ask myself, what perspective am I hanging on to in the moment? It's a reminder for me to relax and open up. Yeah, exactly.
Mm,
Yeah. An exchange of energy almost, you know? Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to this idea of mirroring. Um, am I really observing them hanging on to a perspective, or am I simply observing something that's going on inside of me that I'm projecting into the session?
Hmm.
Ooh,
Ooh.
I mean, that's deep right there.
Yeah. Drop the mic. We'll see everybody later. Goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's always going to be an element of that. And it can be a trap because if we're just projecting all of our stuff onto the session and it's always, you know, oh, how is this a reflection of me? We also can get trapped into, well, how am I ever going to help this client? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
if I'm the one hanging on to perspective, can I call them out on it still? Or is it just me? And so I think there's this kind of like double-edged sword there where we still have to be willing to engage in what we're observing, knowing that we might not have it exactly how it is, right?
Mhm.
Mm. Thanks
Yeah,
for
I was thinking specifically yesterday, actually. I was with a client who was in full resistance. That's it. And it was just negative Nelly. Nothing was going right. Complain, 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 complain. Just keep complaining, complaining, complaining. And I was just, let him speak. Just let him speak. But then I found myself being like, why am I so irritated by somebody who's so negative? Like he's in resistance. But then I'm like, oh, well, you're in resistance to him being in resistance. So it was this thing going on because I was just like, I couldn't even handle it. I was like, I can't stand the negativity. But it was in that moment that I was able just quietly to ask myself, Lord, what are you in resistance about? That kind of dispelled it right there. It doesn't have to, I didn't have to have an answer. I didn't have to go somewhere to fix it. It was simple, that self-awareness that basically said, you're doing what he's doing. That's it. And it went, was able to open it. I was able to, how do I put this? I don't know a better word. Tolerate it. you know, it kind of went away. And as a lot of coaching experiences do, he talked himself right into the, wow, I really sound like a Debbie Downer, don't I? So it was letting it play out. But it's that self-awareness you were talking about in terms of, I had to, the very thing that I was irritating to me, I was resistant to, which obviously makes sense. That's how it is. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's I'm 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 grateful that that's the way I've learned to look. Put it that way. It hasn't always been there. It hasn't always been there.
It's
Yes, I have a
oppressive.
lot of blind spots. That's not one as much anymore. As soon as I can feel it somatically happening, I can usually say, "Whew, what is it that you're in resistance to?" Because it's stuck now. You've got to be able to move this and open this up. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and again, this is so crucial for us to understand. Uh, there's this quote, I think I actually used it in the last session, but we don't rise, under pressure, under circumstances, under like this client coming on the phone and just being so negative, and like, we don't rise to our expectations in those moments. We fall into our practices.
Mm.
And so starting to observe our own practices during a session is really important, and what practices are hidden. Because we're always practicing something, right? So are we practicing really listening in that moment, or are we judging?
Yeah.
And judging is something that we practice all the time as human beings, right? We're just judging machines. And Betty Sproul, the founder of ICG, says one of the best practices that she has discovered in her own life is simply when she's walking down the street or through the grocery store or wherever she is, noticing when she starts judging people, like, oh, what's that shirt that girl's wearing? Or like, ugh, like, did they really just say that? Like, ugh. And just it happens so fast. We're just constantly judging. And we do it with our clients too, even though we're supposed to be in this space of accepting and we're in their corner in this, we judge. And it reminds me of Eckhart Tolle has this story of he's sitting in his house all blissed out because he's Eckhart Tolle, right? And this his neighbor comes to the door and she knocks on the door and it's late and he lets her in. And she just starts going off about the landlord, right? And how the landlord's such a jerk and da da da. And he said he just sat there and listened for like an hour until she wore herself out, right? Which kind of sounds like your client. She wore herself out, and he never said a word. He never led her anywhere. He just sat there. But he sat in a way, he was present in a way where this is what I take from the story. She felt heard still, she felt validated, but he didn't validate her in a way that had her be right about it. He validated her like human being to human being. I hear you.
Mm.
And in that space, she was able to do exactly what your client did. Be like, oh, am I being really obnoxious right now? Like, is it me that's so negative? Right? She starts questioning herself and she starts observing her own, context, her own listening, her own speaking in a way that pulls her out of the negativity and into somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the key. That's the key to coaching. That's that that's that self-reliance that if we let it if we let it move through its natural course without stepping in to fix it or redirect it based on our own intolerances. I can speak for myself when I was coaching and leading teams. Um, that typically what will happen, it'll come back around. I even had a student in a training say, I said, any aha, what would you take away from today? He said, if I just listen long enough, my questions are probably going to be answered. And that was his aha. I was like, wow, that's pretty profound. Yeah.
Mm, it really is. Mm,
But there's this this feeling of a scarcity of time. Got to move forward. Got to produce. Got to make things happen in the world I'm working in. You know, very fast, very about performance and image and promotions and results and rankings. You know, that oftentimes that letting it play out or letting it take its natural course is cut in half. So you don't even know what's on the other end. It could have been something amazing. I never got to that point because we're stepping in to fix it, and move on to the next thing. Right? So, um,
right. And when we do that, when we fix it too quickly, I think that's when it's not sustainable
mhm, right.
because we don't actually see what was creating the problem in the first place.
Mhm,
And that's where the juice is, so to speak,
yeah.
is creating that awareness, being able to observe, oh, not just that I fixed the problem, but was that even a problem? Right? Or was my mind making it a problem? Right? Those are like the moments where not only is the client now able to solve and move forward whatever challenge that they were in, but now when they face that challenge again, it might not even show up as a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about the other side of the equation too. Like, so we step in because we're impatient. We got to move forward. I got to get to this end result, right? So we step in and fix it and move it in a direction that you're right. It's not sustainable. It may feel like in the moment you've done something. But the other side of the equation too is something that actually slowed me down in getting my final PCC call was the cheerleading aspect of it as well,
Mm.
which have being in a world where I was actually a coach, a volleyball coach, um, and then of course led teams. It's that wanting to validate them, wanting to give them that applause, that validation that this is awesome. I'm here with you. I love that. That was awesome. It was perfect, And I always thought, up until I got a lot of perspective that was the right thing to do. Like, isn't that the right thing to do? But now I realize that yeah, support's absolutely appropriate. Yet creating that reliance on me or someone else for that validation, for that approval to say, oh, is that okay? Did I do that right? Versus having their own experience, like what you're talking about, and their own validation that, oh, I did this right. This is right. This is the way to do it. I took that away from a lot of people. So now that's something too that's I'm very cognizant of now to give them the support. Absolutely, no question, but not in a way where they're relying on that from me in order to validate themselves or their actions.
Right. because it's like the Eckhart Tolle story. He could have shut her down in the first 5 minutes and said all the things that she came to an hour later, right? Been like, listen to yourself. Listen to how negative you said. Like that, he could have done that the first 5 minutes, right? Um, but what most likely would have happened is she becomes defensive or she starts blaming herself. Oh gosh, you're right. I'm such a bad person. Or like, right? Like all these negative things could have come out of, let's just solve this right now. I'm tired of listening to you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, but as coaches, we're designing and we're becoming ontological designers, meaning we're also creating a mood. And I think this is important, not just in executive coaching, but in all coaching, listening to the mood that we're creating. Because again, if he had just jumped in and given her the answers, that would have really shifted the mood.
Mhm.
So, as leaders, as coaches, we're aware of the mood we're designing and that mood of you have the answer. We just have to spend a little time to discover it. And, it's like when you think of mood, when you think of like Jaws, right? The movie, it's that
Do
music
do do
playing in
do
the
do do.
background, right? It's coloring and shaping the session. And so from that perspective, the mood we're designing the mood and the mood is designing us. The mood is designing the session because what we design is also designing us. And it's this magical kind of play between these worlds that creates powerful session. Um, and if when we're in this field of ontological design, we don't have to spend so much time trying to fix something. Instead, we're focused on creating something.
Mhm. Yeah, and that mood is also a an indicator of that. You know how we were talking earlier about how do we create that flow, that relationship, that connection when someone may be skeptical of the coaching, right? And you mentioned mood. I'm not sure of the one thing that causes that shift. Of course, it's uniquely different, situational by the second. But I can
Right,
tell you, I notice when it happens, right? When when someone gets maybe a little softer in the way they're willing to take information, maybe, or when they become quiet when they're not typically quiet, or so it is those behaviors that I think are the true tale signs of when that shift is happening. I can notice it, right? Especially when you acknowledge that shift, like bring that observation right there in front of you with them. It changes everything.
right. Mm, powerful. So, what's really coming out of this session for me is one, how connected our questioning is to our listening, and that the listening of coaches, the listening of leaders, how distinct it is. Um, we don't have to agree with everyone on our clients on everything, right? But we honor people's perspectives and we honor their intelligence, which I think is something that we often don't do in this culture, at least in the Western world. We honor their intelligence Not intelligence like 2 plus 2 equals 4. Intelligence like you have the emotional fortitude to discover what it is you're seeking. And what you're seeking is also seeking you. And we can trust that in a way where we don't need to perform. We don't need a list of powerful questions. We simply by being, just by being, we don't have to even say a word sometimes. We don't even need a powerful question sometimes. Just by being fully present as we can be to another human being is sometimes really all that's required.
Mhm. Yeah, there's definitely in the world I work, the need for that more and more. So that need for space to be heard, to create, the alchemy of co-creation, like, right? It's that's why I feel it's so important.
Hmm. So we're running out of time a little bit, but I'm curious. So you did coaching for excellence, ICG's
Mhm.
main course, and
Mhm.
then you went into executive coaching. What's that been like for you?
Well, I kind of did a little executive coaching before, maybe for 3 years prior to getting into um I was Gen 9, so the first group um that went virtual, which I've noticed a bunch of individuals on here, my classmates on here. So
Mhm.
we were so excited about being able to go to Mexico City and California and all these other places, and then we were stuck with COVID, but it was phenomenal. Um yeah, it was great being virtually. Didn't even feel that way. Um but I lost track of the question. Give me that question again because I got so excited about all my Gen 9 in the house.
Yeah, yeah.
What was
Just
the
I want
question
to know
again?
a little bit about your journey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, where do I start? It's been fantastic. I mean, um, how is it different? I don't know if it is any different. The coaching is coaching, whether you're working with an executive or whether you're working with a mom, or that's a stay-at-home mom, or whether you're working for somebody who's it's just same thing, right? And
Mm,
that's how I try to go about it. They just happen to be in different worlds. Their experiences, their environments are different, but they're there wanting to move forward. That's really the essence of it all. And so that's the way I look at it. Um, Stepping into ICG in Gen 9, I was probably at the most vulnerable in my life I could possibly be. So I was actually going to drop out. I wasn't even going to do it. I was like, how can I do this? And the way I am right now, there's no way I can do it. And some beautiful people um, who were leading Gen 9 said, isn't it maybe the best time to do it? And it's actually right. I was open. I was like raw, wide open. And I was with some amazing people. I learned some amazing skills. I learned more about myself. I tell people that all the time. They say, do you know somewhere I can go learn about coaching and get certified? I'm like, yeah, but it's more about, you're going to learn more about yourself than you are about anything else. So it's been life changing, honestly. I mean, I learn more about myself through my clients than I ever could anyway else. And this is like a family. So it's
mhm.
been phenomenal.
That's so
Yeah.
exciting. It's great to hear that not only have you been successful as a coach, like being out in the world coaching, but you're still so connected to our community and always, evolving yourself.
Yeah. I thought at first when I went through the coaching program, because I do a lot of training. I do a lot of training and it is very different. And I thought, wow, coaching. I can't tell you how much just learning the distinctions in coaching and the practice of it has helped um, my interaction in general with people, personally and professionally, and has helped me professionally in training as well because it becomes less didactic and more you know uh, kind of getting their thoughts and their opinions in in a group setting, which is awesome. So very rewarding.
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that, Laura, and thank you for sharing an hour of your time with us tonight. Really great to see so many alumni on the call. So thank you everyone for joining us. And if you're curious about becoming a coach, we're on a mission to bring coaching to the world. It's a growing, growing, growing industry. There's always room for more coaches and really more observers. I think the why this mission is so important to us is when people start to become the type of ontological observer that we're speaking into, uh, possibilities for more joy, more kindness, more understanding in the world really opens up. And we're in a time where that's really feels urgent in a
Mhm.
way.
For sure.
Mitch just put a link in the chat. Thank you, Mitch. Right now, we're enrolling for February. We have a generation coming in. So alumni on the call, if you know anyone interested who wants to become a coach, now's a great time to invite them because we are doing a little promotion until December 5th for an extra $500 off the program. Also, alumni, you don't want to miss out on Betty Spruill, who's doing a free workshop on December 13th called Consciously Co-Shaping Worlds. And this isn't just for alumni, it's for anyone. Anyone can join. But our founder, Betty Spruill, is next level on the coaching spectrum. I mean, she's a master of mastery. So I really recommend anyone listening join us. Join Betty. It's a 3 hour, it's experiential. So that means you're not just going to be listening to like people talk like me and Laura were doing tonight. You're actually going to be very engaged and exploring your own listening, your own language, and how your coordinated actions shape the world that you're living in. So it's a deep dive into some of these ontological distinctions, as deep as we can go in 3 hours, right? Um, as Betty sometimes says, she's like, I still don't understand ontology. And, that's coming from a master. And I think, one, it's really profound because, yeah, as soon as we say we know something, we've boxed it, we've limited it, we've defined it in a way where it can't move now. And so we're constantly in this question of what is ontology? What does it mean to be in the world? What is this thing called the human condition? Um, and how can we bring that not only as coaches, but as people to the world that we live in. So come and hang out December 13th. Come hang out in the next coaching shop. We meet every other Tuesday, same time, same place. And we have one more episode in 2026 with Rebecca, who is a transformational trainer and of course ICG alumni, but she has bringing a really exciting topic as well. So come December for our last call in December, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Laura, anything?
Awesome. No, this has been great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, well, everyone, we'll see you next Tuesday. Not next Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays.
Two
We'll see you.
Tuesdays.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great night.